Week 2 already of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I look to start this week. The first guy, Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos. So Russell Wilson, pretty good ball game in Week 1, even though a lot of missed opportunities for this Bronco team down at the goal line where they fumbled twice down there, and Russ just couldn't get that second touchdown on the board, losing to his former team 17-16 on Monday Night Football. But this week here, he's got another good matchup versus the Houston Texans. I gave up over 350 yards in the air to Matt Ryan of the Indianapolis Colts. So right here, first home game for Russ as a Denver Bronco. Houston, not a great defense, even though they played hard and ended in a tie in Week 1 here. But Wilson, he looked decent. Him and Courtland Sutton were on the same page for the most part. The tight ends were getting involved, and Javonte Williams caught a lot of passes and a lot of screens they were setting up. So the only thing here with Wilson, you want to see him stretch the field more and try that deep ball. I know he hit Jerry Jeudy on one early in that ball game where he took it to the house for 67 yards. But here in Week 2 versus Houston, in his first home game, I think Russell Wilson has a good fantasy day. And once again, will crack the 300 yards with 2 or 3 touchdowns in this one. The second quarterback's Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. So Week 1 was a nightmare for Rodgers and this Packer team here. Receivers dropping passes, receivers not running the right route. And what really set the tone in this one, Rodgers, he had Christian Watson on a deep one. That would have been a touchdown easily. It would have been a 70 or 80 yard touchdown, but he dropped it overrunning or whatever the case may be. And that was it for Green Bay. And they got blown out in Week 1 versus the Minnesota Vikings, 23-7. But Week 2 here, Rodgers versus the Chicago Bears, a team he's owned throughout his career. Obviously, there's going to be growing pains. And obviously, these receivers got to get going quick in this offense, or it could be too late for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers if they're not getting things going by Week 5 or 6 here. So right now, Rodgers got a good matchup versus the Bears. He's owned them throughout his career. And these receivers got to step up, and hopefully Allen Lazard gets back in the starting lineup as well, because if he gets back into things, at least you got one veteran guy to go over there. A.J. Dillon, he played a good role out of the backfield catching the football. But versus the Bears, with his history, Rodgers is a guy I'm going to start, a guy I'm going to have confidence in. And for the most part, Week 1 wasn't his fault, but receivers just not getting in rhythm and dropping passes. So I think it's a bounce-back week here for A-Rod. And he has a good ball game, and he's a quarterback I would start this week, especially that it's a Sunday Night Football game where he's usually dominant. The next quarterback's Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. So Cousins had a good Week 1 showing, but he got the job done, and they beat the Green Bay Packers, 277 pass yards and 2 touchdowns. 184 of those yards went to Justin Jefferson, who had a monster ball game. So Kirk Cousins, this is a pass-first offense now with O'Connell as head coach over there. And we saw it come into play, even though Adam Thielen didn't do much in Week 1 and Irv Smith Jr. didn't do much in Week 1. If Justin Jefferson is going to be a guy getting the majority of the yards and the catches, it's going to be good either way here for Kirk Cousins. And they got a matchup versus the Philadelphia Eagles that gave Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions 35 points in that shootout. So right here, I think Cousins in this one goes for 250, 300 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns again in this one. And this is a Monday Night Football game as well, with 2 games coming up this Monday. The first one, Buffalo at Tennessee at 7:15 Eastern Time, and then 8:30 Minnesota at Philly. So I think this ball game could be a shootout. And like I said, this is a pass-first now type of team. It's going to be over there in Minnesota this season. And I think Kirk Cousins has a good ball game once again, and the guy would start with confidence in 12-team leagues or deeper. The next quarterback's Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. So a rough Week 1 it was here for Matthew Stafford, even though Cooper Kupp got his numbers in and put up a game. But Week 1, he didn't do anything here. Only 12.8 point fantasy points for Matthew Stafford, 240 pass yards, touchdown, 3 interceptions. But right now, a great matchup he has in Week 2 versus the Atlanta Falcons that Jameis Winston had a good game against. And this is another home game here for the Rams. So the Rams, they're not going to want to start the season 0-2. Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp are on the same page. Now he just has to get on the same page here with Allen Robinson, who was quiet in his Rams debut. So I think Stafford gets back on track. He's got a good matchup. The Falcons' defense can't stop anybody. We saw with them versus the Saints where they had a good lead and they blew it in the fourth quarter. And I think Stafford throws for 250 to 300 in this one with 3 or 4 touchdowns possibly. And the Rams get back on the right track. So he's definitely a quarterback I would start this week. And the 5th and final quarterback I would start is Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So week one, not a great ball game for Brady. It was more of a game management type of game and a lot of run heavy. We saw the Tampa Bay Bucs go with Leonard Fournette, and then at the end of the ball game, after Fournette went out, the rookie White got some carries as well in that one. So right here, week one for Brady at Dallas, 212 pass yards, a touchdown, and an info. And Chris Godwin, we know he's going to be out in this ball game here with an injury with the hamstring. We don't know how long he's going to be out, but Julio Jones, he looked pretty decent. Russell Gage, he's pretty decent wide receiver. And Mike Evans, I know him and Lattimore have had matchups over the last few seasons here. But I believe Tom Brady could have a good ball game. And it's another indoor game, which always poises well for Tom Terrific here, even though his home games are in sunny Tampa this season. But indoors at Tampa, it's always good conditions. And I think Tom Brady here, he gets on track this week and has a nice fantasy game with 23 to 25 fantasy points minimum. So that's a few quarterbacks I look to start here for week two of the fantasy football season.